The encounter. The two suns of Proxima Centauri blazed in the sky, their scorching rays beating down upon the bustling streets of New Haven Colony. The marketplace was alive with energy, a kaleidoscope of colors and sounds as various species from across the galaxy traded goods, exchanged gossip, and hurried about their business. The heat of the suns cast long shadows, stretching across the dusty pathways and illuminating the rough, gritty edges of the colony's architecture. This was a colony built on survival, a place where the harshness of space met the vibrancy of life. And nowhere was that more evident than in the market district. Amidst the crowd, a figure moved with purpose. Anthony Lev, a former Marine turned independent contractor, walked through the chaos with a quiet intensity. His shirtless torso gleamed with sweat, a testament to the blazing heat and the physicality of his efforts. The few who glanced his way saw the well-maintained muscles of a man who had spent his life honing his body and mind. His tattoos, an array of military insignia, decorated his arms, reminders of his past and the battles he had fought across countless planets. Despite the attention his physique attracted, Anthony paid no mind. He wasn't here to flaunt his strength or to interact with the aliens who curiously watched him pass by. His mind was set on one thing: the parts he needed for his ship's navigation system. The stellar Voyager had served him well over the years, but it was beginning to show signs of age, and without the new tech, he wouldn't be able to make it to his next job, or the one after that. The bustling market felt like a maze of stalls and structures that seemed to stretch endlessly under the hot sun. Anthony weaved through the crowd, his sharp eyes scanning the surroundings. He'd been to colonies like this before, and his instincts told him to stay vigilant. He was no stranger to danger. Years of combat experience in the Marine Corps had honed his senses to a razor's edge, and right now, every part of him was on alert. Something didn't feel right. As he passed a row of food stands, the sound of laughter reached his ears, mocking and cruel. It was out of place in the otherwise vibrant, chaotic noise of the market. It wasn't the usual bartering or loud conversations. This was the sound of something dark, something violent. His steps slowed. He caught a flicker of movement in his peripheral vision. Too sudden, too out of place. Without thinking, Anthony pivoted sharply, following the feeling that had just sent a warning through his body. He turned down a narrow alleyway between two prefab buildings, the air here thick with the scent of hot metal and dust. It was quieter here, away from the crowd, but the silence felt wrong. Every instinct in his body screamed for him to turn around. But instead, he pressed on, his military training taking over. A lifetime of discipline and combat instinct led him toward the source of the disturbance. His footsteps echoed off the metal walls as he approached the end of the alley. The muffled sounds of struggling, followed by that mocking laughter, grew louder. The alley opened up slightly into a dead-end courtyard, dim and shadowed, with only a few scattered crates and refuse. And then he saw them. 3 drachnids, a species Anthony had fought before in the trenches, stood in a loose circle around a woman. Their reptilian humanoid forms towered over her, their scales the color of dried blood. Their eyes, yellow and unblinking, gleamed with malice as they laughed at the woman in their grasp. She was a Lumini, an elegant race known for their ethereal beauty. Her alabaster skin seemed to glow even in the shadows, her platinum hair falling in disheveled waves around her shoulders. The delicate material of her dress, shimmering and gossamer thin, clung to her slender frame, offering little protection from the menacing drachnids. Despite her beauty and grace, there was a fire in her eyes, defiance that spoke volumes. "I have credits," she pleaded, her voice trembling, though she was clearly trying to maintain her composure. "Take them and leave me be. I'm not worth the trouble." The largest drachnid, his scales marked with crude gang symbols, let out a rasping laugh, his forked tongue flicking out as he considered her words. "Credits? Oh no, pretty thing. We want something much more entertaining." Anthony's blood boiled as the words hit his ears. He had seen this before. The abuse of the vulnerable, the powerless being crushed under the weight of greed and cruelty. His jaw clenched as he took a step forward, his shadow falling over the group. He wasn't a hero, not in the traditional sense, but he couldn't turn a blind eye to this kind of injustice. Not when he had the power to stop it. "Why don't you pick on someone your own size?" His voice, deep and controlled, rang out with an authority that caught the Drachnids off guard. The three reptilian thugs spun around in unison, their forked tongues flicking out as they processed the sudden appearance of the human. The leader's yellow eyes narrowed, sizing up Anthony with a sneer. "Human." The Drachnid spat the word like a curse. "This isn't your business. Walk away while you still can." Anthony's lips curled into a wry smile. "Like hell I will." With that, he dropped into a combat stance, his muscles coiled like a spring. Every move he made was fluid, deliberate, the result of years of training and experience in hand-to-hand combat. The Drachnid leader took a step forward, extending his claws as he hissed. The other two moved in, eager to join the fight. But Anthony was ready. The first Drachnid lunged at him with surprising speed, his claws slashing the air. Anthony sidestepped smoothly, using the alien's momentum against him. He grabbed the outstretched arm, twisting it sharply and throwing the Drachnid face first into the alley wall with a satisfying crunch. The alien crumpled to the ground, dazed and unmoving. The second Drachnid charged next, its claws aimed for Anthony's throat. Anthony ducked, his movements fluid, and delivered a devastating uppercut to the alien's jaw. He felt the bones crack under his fist as the creature staggered back, its body crashing against a pile of crates. The third Drachnid, seeing his companions fall, lunged at Anthony with a vicious growl. But Anthony was already on the move, his fists striking with precision, his attacks fast, relentless, and brutal. Within seconds, the two remaining Drachnids were down, unconscious or too battered to continue the fight. The alley fell silent, save for the heavy breathing of Anthony and the quiet sobs of the Lumini woman. But the fight wasn't over yet. The leader, who had recovered, reached for a weapon at his belt, a neural disruptor, a tool used to disable even the most formidable foes. Before Anthony could react, the weapon fired, sending a crackling beam of energy into his back. Pain exploded through his nervous system. He crumpled to the ground, his legs instantly going numb, his body racked with agony. The Drachnid leader stood over him, gloating. "Not so tough now, are you, human?" he sneered, preparing to fire again. But Anthony's spirit wasn't broken. Despite the searing pain in his body, he gritted his teeth and forced himself to act. Using the strength in his arms, he swept the Drachnid's legs out from under him, sending the alien crashing to the ground. The neural disruptor clattered away as they grappled on the cold, dirty ground. The Lumini woman, seeing an opportunity, grabbed the fallen weapon and fired it at the Drachnid leader. The shot hit its mark, and the alien convulsed once before lying still. Anthony struggled to catch his breath, his body shaking from the aftershocks of the neural disruptor. His legs were still numb, but he managed to push himself upright, his mind sharp despite the pain. The Lumini woman rushed to his side, concern written all over her face. "Are you all right?" Her voice was soft, but there was an edge of worry in it. Anthony forced a grin, though it was strained. "Can't feel my legs," he grunted through gritted teeth. "But I'll manage. Neural disruption usually wears off in a few hours." She bit her lip, clearly distressed. "My apartment isn't far. Let me help you. It's the least I can do after you saved me." Anthony looked up at her, a small smile tugging at the corner of his lips. "Name's Anthony," he said, trying to keep his voice steady. "I'm not one for favors, but yeah, I could use a hand." The Lumini woman nodded, helping him to his feet with surprising strength. As they made their way toward her apartment, Anthony couldn't help but wonder who she was, and why she had attracted the attention of those thugs. There was more to her story than she had let on, and for some reason, he was determined to find out what. Unlikely alliance. The journey to the Lumini woman's apartment was quiet, save for the soft crunch of gravel beneath their feet and the distant hum of the colony's industrial machinery. Anthony could feel the weight of his paralyzed legs dragging him down with each step, but he was stubborn. He wasn't about to let himself be carried like a helpless civilian. His arms, still sore from the fight, worked hard to pull him along, but the Lumini woman, her grace and strength evident in every movement, never once faltered beside him. She led him through narrow alleyways and winding streets until they reached a quieter sector of the colony, where the glow of the twin suns was muted by the large domed structures overhead. This area, unlike the bustling marketplace, was lined with residential units and private quarters. The air here felt fresher, and the surroundings more serene, a stark contrast to the chaos they had just left behind. "Here," she said softly, her voice carrying a quiet authority. She stopped in front of a modest, yet well-maintained door, the soft hum of a shield generator creating a faint buzzing noise as it worked to keep the air inside the apartment regulated. The door slid open as she approached, revealing an interior that was simple yet elegant, filled with soft lighting and decorative elements from her homeworld. "Welcome to my sanctuary," she said, guiding him inside. Her apartment was minimalist in design, with clean lines and a subtle sophistication. The walls were adorned with delicate art pieces from the Lumini homeworld, ethereal images that seemed to shimmer slightly, as if alive. There was a sense of calm here, an air of quiet strength that matched the woman herself. Anthony took a moment to take in his surroundings before she gently urged him toward a plush chair by a low table. The chair was made of a soft, silken material, and as he sat down, he noticed the pain in his legs had dulled slightly, though the numbness remained. He let out a relieved sigh as he relaxed, grateful for the chance to catch his breath. The Lumini woman moved quickly to a nearby cabinet, her movements graceful, purposeful. She returned with a glass of cool, crystalline water, offering it to him with a small, polite smile. "You must be parched after the fight. Drink. It will help." Anthony took the glass, his fingers brushing against hers as he accepted it. "Thanks," he said, his voice rough with exhaustion. "I'm not usually in the habit of getting ambushed like that." "You must have been scared, huh?" Her violet eyes met his, her expression unreadable. "I've been in worse situations," she replied, her voice calm. "I'm not frightened easily. But you're a different kind of human. I've never seen a fighter like you." Anthony raised an eyebrow, surprised by her assessment. "I'm just a guy who knows how to fight. The rest is just survival instincts." He paused, looking down at his legs. "Not that I can use those instincts much right now." She took a seat across from him, folding her legs beneath her with the elegance of her people. "And yet, even without your legs, you fought better than any other being I've encountered. That's something remarkable." Even the Drachnids, known for their strength and ferocity, didn't know what hit them. Anthony shifted uncomfortably, feeling the weight of her words. It was just training. Years of it. "But you..." He hesitated, his gaze lingering on her. "I've got to know. Why were they after you?" Her gaze softened, but there was a sadness in her eyes that Anthony couldn't ignore. "I am a Lumini from a noble house. My family once ruled a vast portion of our world, and with that came great power and wealth. But power breeds enemies, and mine are many. I had hoped to escape the politics of my past, but they follow me everywhere. The Drachnids you faced, one of many factions who seek to control my family's wealth, and with it, the secrets my house holds, the hidden pursuit." The days following their uneasy alliance were a blur of activity. Anthony Lev, despite the lingering numbness in his legs, adjusted to his new reality with surprising adaptability. His physical condition had forced him to rely more on his upper body, and in many ways, that only sharpened his instincts. His life had always been about using every advantage, and right now, his body, diminished as it was, had become just another weapon in his arsenal. He wasn't going to let a simple thing like paralyzed legs slow him down. Not now, not with everything on the line. The Lumini woman, who, despite her ethereal beauty, had yet to reveal much of her past, had taken charge of organizing their next steps. She seemed to be an expert at blending into the background, moving with silent efficiency, while her mind was always several steps ahead. Anthony found himself both impressed and frustrated. She rarely revealed more than she needed to, even when it came to the details of their next moves. But he was learning to trust her instincts, for they were always right. She had explained the plan. There was an ancient space station hidden deep in the uncharted territories, a place where, according to her family's secret records, the device was being kept. The station had been abandoned for centuries, its purpose lost to time. But the device, a relic from the early spacefaring age, was hidden within its core, guarded by a series of security protocols left intact by the ancestors of her family. And the Drachnids, the ruthless mercenary faction that had been hunting her, knew exactly where it was. "What we're about to do," she had said one evening, her voice low and steady as she examined a star map on the wall, "won't be easy. They've been searching for this station for years, and they're closer to finding it than we'd like." Anthony had nodded, his mind racing with possibilities. How do we get there before they do? She turned, her violet eyes sharp and calculating. We won't get there first. We need to be the ones who get there last. They'll lead us straight to it, but we'll have to outsmart them every step of the way. If we can't do that, then everything we've worked for will be for nothing. Anthony leaned back in his chair, his mind turning over the details of the plan. So, we're going to play them. Let them think they're in control, while we pull the strings behind the scenes. Exactly, she replied. We'll get close enough to strike when the moment is right. The next several days were spent in near silence as they made preparations for the journey. The Lumini woman, whose name Anthony still didn't know, was a mystery in every sense of the word. She spoke little of her past, except to confirm that her family's history was one fraught with power struggles, political machinations, and betrayal. She seemed to carry the weight of her lineage like a burden, a constant reminder that her every move was being watched. Anthony, however, wasn't one for idle chatter. He focused on what he could control, preparing the ship, reconfiguring the weaponry, checking every system to ensure that it was in top shape. The Stellar Voyager, his aging but reliable ship, was the only thing he truly owned, and he trusted it more than he trusted most people. With it, he could take on anything the galaxy threw at him. The ship's interior was a mix of old and new. The navigation system was a hodgepodge of ancient alien technology. Some of it scavenged from wrecked ships, others bought off shady dealers in unregulated sectors. Anthony had kept the ship running with the same resourcefulness that had kept him alive in the worst of times. Now, with the Lumini woman's guidance, the ship was being prepped for the most important mission of his life. The night before they were set to leave, Anthony sat alone in the cockpit, staring out at the distant stars. His mind kept drifting back to the woman, to her quiet strength, and to the weight of the responsibility she had placed on his shoulders. She had revealed little about the device or its significance, but there was something deeply personal in her eyes when she spoke about it. It wasn't just about saving herself or stopping the Drachnids. It was about protecting something far larger than her, something that could change the fate of entire worlds. The Lumini woman appeared behind him, her presence as quiet as always. "Are you ready?" she asked, her voice cutting through the stillness. He turned to face her, offering a small nod. "Ready as I'll ever be." She stepped closer, her eyes narrowing slightly as she observed him. "You don't seem worried." Anthony gave a dry laugh. "I'm always worried. It's just part of the job." He leaned back in his chair, glancing at the controls. "The real question is, are you ready?" She looked at him, her lips curving into a small, knowing smile. "I've been preparing for this moment my entire life." For a moment, neither of them spoke. The weight of their mission hung between them, an invisible thread pulling them together. Then, with a steady breath, the Lumini woman moved to the communications panel and began transmitting coordinates to the ship's navigation system. "We leave in an hour," she said, her voice steady. "Prepare yourself. Once we're on our way, there's no turning back." Anthony couldn't help but notice the finality in her tone. There was no room for error, no opportunity for second chances. The stakes were higher than ever before, and if they failed, everything they fought for would be lost. As the stellar Voyager lifted off the surface of New Haven Colony, Anthony glanced out of the viewport, watching the planet shrink into the distance. The vastness of space stretched before them, an infinite expanse filled with danger and uncertainty. Yet, amid the darkness of the void, there was a spark of hope. Small, fragile, but burning brightly. The journey to the hidden station would be fraught with danger. The Drachnids were never far behind, and their search for the device was relentless. But Anthony was used to being hunted. He'd been through far worse in his life, and if there was one thing he knew, it was that he could survive. As the ship entered warp speed, the stars streaking past them, Anthony felt the familiar surge of adrenaline in his veins. The road ahead was uncertain, but he was ready. He would protect this mysterious woman, this Lumini who had entered his life by chance, and together they would stop the Drachnids from unleashing destruction on the galaxy, no matter what it took. As they headed into the unknown, the only thing certain was the challenge that lay ahead, and Anthony was ready to face it head-on.